Yeah, there is the story which Ilse Hess published in her book England, Nuremberg, Spandau, Destiny in Letters, where she make also a parallel with Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, who wrote the story, the world famous story of the Little Prince, and it is one of the most successful book in the world, 140 million copies only as an information. In 1944, Saint-Exupéry took off from Bastia Airport in Corsica on his last reconnaissance flight toward Grenoble in his Lockheed F-5. He never returned, and he was then considered missing ever since. There were serious theories. Maybe he was shot down, we don't know, or maybe he took the life. Maybe he made suicide, because we had in his stories, letters, signs of severe depression, and that's also true for Rudolf Hess, who attempted not only once suicide. That's the one thing, and he was also the lonely man flying somewhere in the dark, somewhere in the long distance, like in a sort of mystery, and there is the depression in the background. I think that's worth mentioning this parallel that Ilse Hess draw with her husband. Yeah, that's also true. And in 1949, as I said, she corresponded with Winifred Wagner. Winifred Wagner was the wife of the son of Richard Wagner, and Adolf Hitler adored Richard Wagner. Richard Wagner was something like an intellectual god for Adolf Hitler, and Winifred Wagner also she was also convinced, and she had also a relationship with Adolf Hitler, which she described as a very positive relationship. We can say it like this. Yeah, and they corresponded, so maybe they also had both Nazi beliefs after the world and shared. In an interview with Der Spiegel, this is the weekly newspaper in Germany, most famous, we can say, she claimed that Winston Churchill, had drugged her husband, give him drugs upon his arrival in England. That Winston Churchill wanted to extract information from Rudolf Hess and with drugs. At the same time, she denied all theories suggesting that her husband had become schizophrenic or mentally ill. This was a theory stated in the Nuremberg trial. They said this guy is mentally ill, and she said that's not true. She said that she was only acting like mentally true, but like acting this, and not that he was not mentally true, never. After the war, Rudolf Hess behaved peculiarly, bizarrely, even in the Spandau prison. I mentioned it, as his fellow inmate Albert Speer later recalled. Albert Speer was known to be in a sort of opportunistic follower of the Nazi regime, and also he used all advantages from that. Yeah, as I said, Albert Speer joined maybe the movement to get money and a good job. The two, like he stated it like that afterwards, the two spent 20 years together in prison, and after the 20 years Albert Speer was released. Rudolf Hess was not released. He had to stay there more than 20 years more until his death, until his suicide at the end. Together in prison, but reportedly hardly ever spoke. So the two guys were 20 years together in the prison, and they didn't spoke hardly. Until December 1969, Hess forbade his family to visit him. Also, this was a strange decision from Hess. He wanted only to contact with letters, only writing with her wife. He refused to accept his captivity under any easing of conditions. He wanted to be the ascetic guy in the prison, often insisting on self-punishment and extreme austerity. Yeah, this is his fanatical background. Maybe here we see his wife accepted all this, understood his motives, and maintained contact with him only through letters. But maybe this was also the charisma Rudolf Hess. Maybe this was the reason why the wife adored this guy, because this guy had this, like in fanatical power, we can say. Mystical, fanatical. For many years she remained loyal to him, which earned her the nickname the Persistent one, die Beharrliche. When Hess was hospitalized in the British military hospital in West Berlin in 1969 due to a perforated stomach ulcer, I don't know how to pronounce it. He has problem with his stomach, some serious thing. And there he allowed for the first time a half-hour family visit once a month. After this, maybe he saw that he can die, and he said, "Okay, once in a month, I want to see them, the wife and his son Wolf-Ruder." That was the first time in 1969 since the war that the family met again. Their son, Wolf Rüdiger Hess, was 32. Ilse was 69, and they had not seen Rudolf Hess since his departure in 1941. Yeah, when he departed for the mysterious flight to Scotland. To conclude, Ilse Hess was a woman who, above all, remained faithful to her ideals. Yeah, she didn't change her mind after the war, and even more so to her husband. There is a strong loyalty, even though he had behaved very strangely toward her from the very beginning. We saw the platonic love for 7 years without any touch, as I said, and the woman was waiting. Hitler said, "Okay, get married," and then he did it. Of course, this is no excuse for she had been part of National Socialism from the start, helping and contributing also, we have to say, with all its negative traits also, and therefore cannot be regarded in any way as an innocent victim. So also Ilse Hess had contributed to this National Socialistic regime, we have to keep in mind. Yeah, that was all, my dear friends.